doing question 5, section 5.4, page 243 of the textbook. So the instructions that it gives us are not correct. The actual instructions should be write the equation for the graph given. So to write an equation, we need amplitude, which is the A value. We need B, which affects the period. We need C, which is the phase shift, and D, which is the vertical displacement. So the first thing we're going to do is look at the amplitude. So we can see that our middle is here at 0. This is our equator. And so we know that the amplitude is from the top or bottom of the crest to the middle, and it's always absolute value. So this value right here will be A, so A is equal to 3. Always absolute value, so it'll be positive 3. To get B, we have to divide 2 pi, divide 2 pi by the period length. So period is how long it takes to go through one complete, like for example, one sine graph, so all the way up, all the way down, and then back to the original point. So that's the period. So to find B, we do 2 pi divided by the period, which is 4, which will give us an answer of pi over 2. Now we can see that the graph starts at 0, because this is 4, 3 right here, 2, 1, 0, so there's no phase shift. And again, the equator is at 0, so there's no vertical displacement. From here, we can make our equation. So y equals is a positive sine graph because it goes up to begin with. So y equals amplitude, which is 3, sine because it's a positive sine graph, and then we use b, which is pi over 2. And I like using brackets so I can separate the parts. So this is b right here, and then x. And because there's no phase shift or vertical displacement, that's the end of our equation right there. I'm going to do one more example. I'm going to do maybe a couple more examples. Sorry, I lost my track. There we go. Going to do E now. So E, we can see that the amplitude is from equator to pi, so then A will be pi. Let's write that down. A equals pi. B, it'll be the period length, or 2 pi divided by the period length. So as we can see, the distance from this point right here, which is the start of the sine graph, to here, which is the end, is not 10, it's actually 12, because we're starting from -2, so B will be 2 pi divided by 12, or pi over 6. And then C will be, as you can see, we moved, when we started the graph, we started at -2 instead of 0, so it was moved 2 to the left, or -2. So C, we want it to be positive in the equation so that it'll show that we're going to the left. So right here we show negative. So C equals -2. And again, because the amplitude going upwards and the amplitude going downwards are the same, we know our equator is going to be in the middle. Our equator is right here, and there's no change in it, so it's just D equals 0. So we can write the equation for this. Y equals, it's a positive sine graph, so and the amplitude is pi, so we do y equals pi sine of the b value, which is pi over 6, and then the phase shift, so x. And because we're putting it into the bracket here, it's going to be x plus 2, signalizing a shift to the left, even though plus 2 would normally mean right. So I'm going to do one more example. I'm going to do, so as we can see, D, the amplitude is going to be 2, as shown right here. So A equals 2. B equals 2 pi divided by the period length. So this one's a little bit more tricky because instead of being given numbers, we're given radians. So to find the period length, or from this point to this point, we have to 13 pi over 4 minus pi over 4. So we get 12 pi over 4, which is the same as 3 pi. So then 2 pi divided by 3 pi to get the b value, that's equal to 2/3 because the pi's cancel. The shift is obviously, you can see it's, we start at pi over 4 to the right, so the shift is pi over 4. And again, there's no vertical displacement because this value and this value are just absolute. This is the absolute value of this. This is just in the middle. There's no shift whatsoever, so that's just d. We can get our equation from here. So y equals, this is a negative cos graph because it starts in the bottom, so we're going to start with a negative, and then we're going to put in the 2. However, the 2 will, it's still, amplitude still has to be absolute value, so this negative doesn't make the amplitude negative. It just shows that the graph is negative because it's a negative cos graph. So -2 cos, because we're starting on the bottom, we're not starting in the middle. That's how you can tell if it's a sine or cos graph. Sine graphs will start in the middle, and cos graphs will either start at the top or the bottom, depending on if they're positive or negative. So we have -2 cos, 2/3. No, sorry, I'm gonna erase that because it's getting in my way. -2/3. And then the shift is x, and because we're putting it into the bracket, you have to make it minus, so when we take it out, it'll be a shift to the right. That's how to get an equation given a graph. What you need to do is you need to find the amplitude, the b value, which affects the period, the phase shift, and the displacement. Because this is the formula for graph. So y equals a sine b x minus c plus d. So you need to get a, b, c, and d to get a complete equation. A being amplitude, b being what affects the period, c being your phase shift, and d being vertical displacement.